I tell you what, man, I think a very, and I mean extremely, underrated story in sports this week is the Todd Bowles give up.
Yeah.
And it's not being talked about because, well, it's over, the Bucs are out. Also, in Tampa, there's really no more access to the players and coaches. Like they have scattered. They're done. They did the final interviews and they're out. So there's really nothing more to say about it. I cannot stop thinking about it.
So if you don't know what this is, in the
because you just don't see this.
No, in the divisional game, the Buccaneers had a chance to go down and tie the game, and they threw the pick. And interception, thanks for coming, game's over.
Minute and a half.
The Lions, and there was one timeout the Bucs had, and it didn't matter. The Lions could just take 3 knees and run out the clock. Problem with that is that Dan Campbell and the Lions didn't run the clock down. They were snapping the ball with plenty of time left on the clock. So when they got to 3rd down, had the Buccaneers called a timeout, there would have been 33-ish seconds left. And at that point, the Lions would have had to either kick a 45-ish yard field goal right around there, or, give the ball back to Tampa. And if they had kicked the field goal and missed it, they're in great position. And the damnedest thing is, Bowles didn't call timeout. He let the Lions run out the clock when he could have forced them to do something on 4th down.
Yeah, I'm not really sure which is worse.
Both are bad.
Dan Campbell, and we all love Dan Campbell.
Yes.
But, man,
it's
did he royally screw that up?
Can you imagine if that had gone sideways?
I mean, it's insane. It was a gift from Dan Campbell that he did not manage the clock well enough to allow Tampa to even have a chance. A total miscalculation and complete mismanagement of the clock, which we would be raking Mike McCarthy or Sean McDermott over the coals about. But the great Dan Campbell, no one seems to care.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so then Bowles just basically said the game is over. Now, what I was reading is that they came at him pretty hard about this after the game and continued to as long as they had access to him. And his answer, it's basically
ridiculous.
It's the same. He's just saying the game was over.
He said, and I quote, "They already had a field goal lined up."
Yes.
By the way, it wasn't a chip shot. He said they would have been about 12 seconds left on the clock. That's not true. And he said, we're not going to come back from that. There's no sense in prolonging the obvious.
Yeah.
Now, they were down by a touchdown. So had they kicked the field goal, that ends the game. Why not force them to kick the field goal?
Well, exactly. I mean, it's really egregious. And I've never seen anything like it in a playoff game where we expect every single player and coach to lay it all on the line at all costs, no matter what, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what the playoffs are. That's why we love them, is that it's all in, like, we're going to do everything we can to beat you, and you can count us out, but even 13 seconds left on the clock, Chiefs drive down, tie the game, right? Yeah, we're fighting. We're doing everything we can. That's what we're conditioned to believe about the NFL and NFL teams. I still cannot believe he viewed it that way. He's claiming them being in field goal range is why he gave up. He's saying that they would have been down 11. In his head, I thought he said 17 seconds, but 12 seconds, whatever. There would have been more time than that. But even if they made the field goal, they're down 11 and it's over. Well, he's right about that.
Yeah.
But why not make them kick it?
Because here's my thing. They were at the 31 when they kneeled. 34 seconds. So you bleed off a second to kneel, right? You call a timeout, and then that field goal is going to take, I don't know, what's a field goal take? 5 seconds? But if they miss it, all of a sudden you're in business. You have 28-ish seconds, and you need a touchdown. But I mean, at that point, you get it from where they kick it. So I mean, you're close to the 40-yard line. You're telling me with Baker Mayfield's arm that you can't throw a couple down there, or at least get in position where you're throwing a Hail Mary or two? Look, 99 times out of 100, I'll even say this. 1,000 times, they probably win every one but one. But to not give yourself an opportunity or at least force them to kick that ball.
Really wild.
You can block the kick. I mean, weird things happen. It's just, it's unbelievable that you just are dismissive and say there's no sense in prolonging that.
Well,
Makes no sense.
Somebody mentioned he screwed up and he doesn't want to admit it. That's exactly right. I mean, he knows he's probably, and what I think is worse is that in the moment, he probably didn't even realize it.
No.
He was so out to lunch about it.
Well, because once the pick happened, and Dan Campbell was too, because they just were like, well, the interception was thrown and it was like, it's the end of the game. And everyone just was out there cavalry. God, it was very cavalier of everybody to just assume that it was over and headsets were coming off.
Good little pivot.
How someone wasn't in Bull's ears telling him, hey, by the way, man, at one point, I think they snapped the ball with like 16 seconds left on the play clock. How someone wasn't in his ear being like, dude, they can't run this out right now. Just
no one noticed it. Not one.
Yeah, I think it was just
they told him and he's like, they're going to kick a field goal.
I guess.
We're good.
We have like a get back coach in the NFL that keeps them off the field. I am shocked that teams don't have like a clock management guy in these coaches' ears.
And for someone to say, who says Campbell wouldn't have run a play on fourth down? Sure, fine, let him run a play. You're still getting the ball at the 35 with 30 seconds left.
Well, Campbell could have run around and then he could have extended the play and had the guy run all the way back out of the end zone for a safety.
Yeah, I guess you could have done that.
That does happen when you're down on the other end. I've never seen somebody do it from all the way over at the 31.
You run a real risk that someone's going to hunt your ass out. Like,
but you don't do that either, right? Like, he's going to try to kick a field goal. That's really that's really the only thing he can do, and that's fine, and he probably makes it. But, dude, I'm telling you, I can't stop thinking about it because I cannot believe that two head coaches at that level in that big of a game, in a one-score game, both screwed it up so bad. I've never seen anything like that.
It's pretty interesting, and you're right in that Campbell, at the beginning, Dan was so murdered for being Dan Campbell. And now it's kind of gone the other way that when Dan does dumb things, and look, I love Dan Campbell. He makes decisions that are very hard to defend, but because of the way, it's like when Barkley says something on TNT, you're like, oh, that's Chuck. When Campbell says something now, we're like, it's Dan Campbell. Like, this is what he does. But you're right that if it was another coach,
he's getting absolutely
we kneecap him.
Dude, Mike McCarthy would have gotten fired for that.
Yes.
He would have.
Yes.
On either side, if he were Bowles or Campbell.
People, they would not let it go. But Dan is...
That's wild, man.
He just is a unique guy. And someone said this is the most anyone's ever talked about Todd Bowles, which is why no one really cares. Because he's just, it's like, it's Todd Bowles.
I've never thought a lot of Todd Bowles. And
he's a hell of a defensive coordinator. And I thought he did a nice job this year.
He did do a nice job this year.
They were dead.
Here's what I would say. I've always thought he sucked. I'm like, they're just, what are they doing with Todd Bowles? Tom Brady leaves. I'm like, well, that's a good opportunity to get a new young coach in there or whatever, right? Well, they stuck with Bowles. Yep. He proved me wrong. He was good this year. Okay, obviously there's something to Todd Bowles. And so then they get into the second round of the playoffs, and I'm like, oh my God, Todd Bowles. And then I bet on Tampa. Like, I was like, dude, I think they could win this. This is going to be good. He had me almost flipped the other way, and then he goes and pulls something like this and completely reminds me why I was right in the first place, that he sucks.
They went 8-9 and 9-8 with him. So in a really crappy ass division, they have another one of those, and Todd could be finding himself on the outside. Like
Did they go 8-9?
They went 8-9 the last year with Brady.
With Brady,
that's right. And then this year they went 9-8, and they were dead in the water. And then they figured some stuff out, and they managed to win that crappy ass division. But what I'll say about Todd Bowles, and I think there's a lot of coaches that are like this, and there's a lot of quarterbacks that are like this. Coaches and quarterbacks, to me, have a very similar feel in that there is about 5 or 6 that are really elite. They're different. You get one of those guys, you have a huge leg up on anywhere else. And then you got about 5 or 6 that are just awful, and you're not going to win with them. You're just not. I don't care what you put around them, you stink. And then everyone else, you're just kind of mushed in the middle. Yeah, there's a hierarchy there, but there's not a huge difference. And I think this is kind of my Todd Bowles thing. He's not the problem in Tampa, but he's not the solution. He's just not. He is like having like Ryan Tannehill back in the day as your quarterback. You're like, yeah, it's fine. You know, you're not in love with it, but eventually they'll have a bad year. Like next year, if they go 8-9 next year and they don't win that division, Todd Bowles will be fired. And because you're not really missing anything, you know that he's not terrible,
easily replaced.
But yeah, exactly, he's easily replaced. No one's like, oh my God, what are we going to do if we move on from Todd Bowles? What go find the next Todd Bowles. Those are easy to do.
Yeah, I really am interested. This is something I'm so fascinated by in sports. I really want at some point to get better insight into clock management and what it's like from a head coach perspective.
It's worse than you think.
Well, I know. We've talked to Dan Lanning about that.
Yeah.
I mean, Lanning has actually
been honest about it.
Yeah, he talks about it, and I've learned a lot from listening to him talk about it because we have access to coaches, but not that much. Yeah. But Lanning, we have access to every week, and we have talked to him about it because he's been raked over the coals about it.
Yeah,
and I've learned a lot listening to him, but I want more. Like Andy Reid, for example, used to be just crushed for this.
Yeah.
He was awful at it. Andy Reid is a Hall of Fame coach, one of the best NFL coaches ever. And he could not get out of his own way with clock management late in the game.
Chip Kelly was like that too.
Yeah, Chip was like that.
Bad clock management.
So I really, man, if I ever got fired, which will happen, maybe I'll do some big expose on exploring this because I'm fascinated by it. I think why I'm fascinated by it is because it just doesn't seem that effing hard. You're the head coach, right? We're all watching on TV. If I can see something on TV that is pretty obvious, like Tampa has a timeout, you should know that too.
One of the reasons, and this doesn't excuse Todd Bowles, but I think one of the reasons like Andy Reid and a guy like Chip, those are just the first two off my head, play callers, it's harder than
because they've got more going on.
Yeah. And having stood in huddles,
Shanahan, same
thing, because there is a lot going on. Whereas if you're a CEO type, I think you have a little more clarity. You need to turn over that responsibility to someone else. I have been in
Pete.
Yeah, I've been in huddles. I've been on sidelines. I've been standing around and like when I'm just some slappy on the sidelines, I often stand by coaches and I think it's very interesting. You'd be amazed at how many times the conversations going upstairs and down are pretty chaotic. There's just a lot going on and there's a lot of voices and stuff is easily lost. And if you don't have one person that is just great at that, stuff falls through the cracks because it's chaotic.
That's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about is like, these are such important things.
They're huge.
Why?
They don't take it more seriously.
Why does this crap keep happening? Why is it not taken more seriously? It's fascinating.
Pressure breaks everything. Pressure breaks pipes. Pressure breaks. Like when you apply pressure, stuff happens. It's like why does Jordan Love throw that god awful interception? Pressure. And and no coach wants to admit it. Coaches, when there's pressure on, it's this.
You do not want me as your head coach. Okay, you don't. But the one thing that I can tell you is that my S would be tight on those items.
Yeah.
And my Hail Mary plays. Those are the two things I can promise you.
Be dialed in.
You may want me as your.
That's your interview with the owner.
I've got two things I bring to the table. Yeah. One, any sort of clock management, timeout, faux pas, you can kiss them goodbye.
Yep.
I'm great at it. Second, when we run a Hail Mary or a Hail Mary is run against us, we're going to be dominant.
You will be. That is your calling card. Wait till the Hail Mary happens.
We are going to be dominant.
It's our time to shine.
I'm just fascinated. The Todd Bowles and Dan Campbell. Oh my God. How to screw up a game. I mean, it didn't matter, which is why no one's talking about it. But God, could it have?
In a playoff game of that magnitude.